So, today we're going to discuss the sign of Cancer, how it represents our feelings and our emotions, our connection to our mother, our safety. Now, I just want to remind us that the planets, the signs, and the houses, they're all quite different. But in evolutionary astrology, we tend to bring some of that language in each of them to make sure that we're having a connection and understanding the synthesis between a chart. So I just wanted to put that out there. So you might hear words that are interchanged with the moon in Cancer, kind of depending. So if that's confusing, please let me know. So the moon in particular in our chart is the planet of our personal preferences. It's our safety mechanisms and our emotional reaction, how we trust others. I also wanted to say as well, after reading some homework bits, for those of you who are feeling overwhelmed with information and taking notes, maybe with this session, you might want to relax. Maybe with this session, you might want to not take any notes and just kind of feel into it. Because the fourth house, Cancer, the moon brings rest. It's no longer about the logical mind, it's dropping down into the body, into the emotions. So I just wanted to put that out there too. Give yourself some grace today. Don't feel like you need to write it all down, just feel it. So the fourth house represents our home, it's our family, it's the place where we find safe respite, where we run and hide. And it's our relationship to one of our dominant parents. So, a lot of times, depending on a person's chart, when you look at their fourth house and you start to discuss things, they're like, oh no, that's my dad. And so it just kind of depends. We'll go over that as we talk about the sun. We'll talk about things more, how to identify, which parent a person can be more closely related to and why. And we'll start going into that now. So today we're talking about the element of water, which is what I kind of wanted to bring in today's class chart. There's just there's a lot of energy. We just had the planet parade, which was the new moon, and it was about 7 planets all aligned in this Piscean energy. So when we're in the element of water, we need to take our time. We need to allow things to happen, to process, to flourish, to grow. So it's not something that can be rushed, just like we can't rush our children to the next developmental stage. With the element of water, it gives us the emotional process to let things go. So generally, when we are in our emotional state and we are feeling things, eventually we feel them so much that we want them to change. And through that change, there's a process of letting go. There's a process of like, okay, this has gone through my digestive system. I know where I'm at and I know who I am. So Cancer is very much understanding, who you are, and the element of water, because we're connecting to our feelings and our emotions, it helps us identify further based on our intuition, um, based on kind of how we're reading our family life, our partners, and then the world. So our family life is that Cancer aspect of water. Our relationships with other people are the Scorpio part of the water. And then our relationship to the world and how we feel connected with everybody is Pisces. So it's this fundamental connection where we are building emotional bonds, right? So we're going back to the basics. It's a cardinal sign, just like Aries, where we were in the beginning. We're back to the cardinal sign, and the mode of operation that controls our actions, our emotions, our relationship, and our authority in the world. So it's a very changing kind of energy. And when we are dealing with the cardinal signs, these people cannot be pushed. These people come into this world really having a close identity with who they are and are willing to do anything at all costs to protect it. So there's that. So the symbol of the crab is that hard exoskeleton. I don't know if you know any cancers in your life, but they're very brute and scruff on the outside. But when you sit down and you give them tea and you give them a little food, they start to melt. And you want to dip the insides in butter because, man, they've got a lot to say. They have thought a lot. They have spent a lot of time by themselves, scurrying through the rocks and, finding a cave for safety. And so that's why the physical arms of a Cancer are really important. You'll notice them, whether they be large or short or long, their arms are always very noticeable. And I know one Cancer in particular who always talks about having her feelers out, always being able to notice what's going on. And so that's kind of that crabby sense as well. We've got all these appendages, and we're really able to feel the world. And so there's always kind of this contact with people and their emotional states, yourself and your own emotional states. So it's almost like the crab can't let go. It's always in some kind of connection. So we're just going to talk a little deeper about the cardinal mode of operation. So as we see this chart here, we've talked about Aries and Mars in the first house. We're talking about Moon in the fourth house. We'll eventually talk about Venus in the seventh house and Libra, and then we'll talk about Saturn and the 10th house in Capricorn. So this is what makes the cardinal axis. And this is an extremely important axis because it represents the four angles. Astrologers like to refer to particular areas of the chart as a generalization. And when they talk about the angles, they're talking about this. The reason why it's important is because it is a huge delineation of how the chart is broken apart. We've got Aries in the first house that delineates our ascendant. We have the opposite of that, which is the Libra, which is our descendant, which is generally what we have the least amount of. Then we've got I forgot where I was. I'm sorry. So if you have planets in any of these houses, it means that this person is going to be geared towards focusing on this area first and foremost. These are the prominent angles. That's where I am. Okay, so the major breakdown of the chart. So, so we've got the ascendant, we've got the descendant, we've got the medium choli, which is the MC, which is the top of the chart, what people generally refer to as the MC, and the IC, which is the fourth house. So these four cardinal signs help break up the chart so that a person knows where the beginning, the middle, and the end are in the chart and how it's broken apart. I'll explain that better later, probably when we get to Capricorn, because I'll have my stuff together, but I just wanted to add that. So cardinal signs bring in fresh awareness to our actions. This is where we have to make a change. This is where a lot of times, if we've got planets here, we actually have to do a lot. It's a lot of activity. The cardinal signs help us see where the cracks are, where things are missing, where we need to reinvent ourselves. The cardinal signs embolden us to test ourselves and test one another. It's a very relational cardinal energy, where we come into this life by ourselves, but then we find our mothers, and then we're in relationship to others, and then one day we grow up and we become the authority in the 10th house. So it's just kind of this developmental axis and mode of operation that kind of lets us see where we are developmentally. It defines our essential needs in these houses. We all need survival techniques in the first house. We always need a home in the fourth house. We always need relationships and resources in the seventh house. And we need credible sources and laws in the 10th house. So these are just like fundamental things for ourselves and a society to flourish. So water is an element, of course, and it encapsulates Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So the key words I like to associate are caring for one another, being other focused. Um, so while these people do kind of have a very close sense of who they are, they're very much always thinking about how to please and care for the other. That is just where they're invested. They're invested in the emotions of other people. They want to have close and intimate relationships that they can trust. So, that generally can sometimes come from family, um, but sometimes it doesn't. And water helps us get very close and intimate with our emotional maturity. So, um, like I mentioned, there's a care and worry for others, to a fault almost, sometimes to one's own neglect. We care so much for the other that sometimes we'll be willing to put their needs first so that we can finally get back to our own. So water kind of pushes us in this way. Um, it's the essential emotional needs that we have. Just the very bare minimum. It doesn't need to be flowers and candy, but it definitely needs to be a sense of belonging and to have a connection to one's emotional state, knowing why you cry, knowing why you have particular reactions. Water is our walls, our safety mechanisms past Mars. I mean, this is intrinsic, cannot fight it. This is something that we're born with, feeling this need to protect ourselves in a particular way because we felt mistrust. We've seen someone not show up for us in the right way. And so we base our personal reactions on that and move forward with that in mind. So, there's skepticism when we involve Scorpio into the mix, and there's distrust with Cancer if they are not held in the particular way that they're needed. And then, disillusionment and not really understanding, not really having a course of direction, maybe having some neglect. That's what Pisces brings. It's just um, where there is no control center, where someone isn't really showing up in the ways that they need to. So those are some of like the shadowy aspects of it. But um, in a positive light, these are highly sensitive signs. They need proper protection in order to just have a nice life, a life that's enjoyable and emotionally secure. Um, and they need that proper nurturing early in life. So if that hasn't been given, you can imagine what kind of emotional reactions these people might have until they develop trust or find the right people to trust. So these are also the signs of what would be considered developmental delay. And that is only because these people are not able to move at other people's rhythms. They need to move at their own. And that is categorized as slow in our patriarchal system. But water is a very feminine, very receiving, it's a flowing energy that you can't control. As we've experienced here in the Bay Area, when we're walking on some of the paths, we've had so much rain that they've just washed out the walking paths. And no matter how much concrete, no matter how much man-made material they put up in this area, this water destroys. And so there is this thing of this uncontrollable part of the world, part of our emotions, part of who we naturally are, um, that moves and that is not stagnant and cannot be contained in a vessel. Um, and so that's why when there's a lot of water in the chart, when there's a lot of water energy, kind of feel like we don't have a leg to stand on and just feels like there's no groundedness. Um, Generally, with Cancer, there's the close connection with the mother or the need to have a close connection with the mother, and it wasn't received, excuse me. There's commitment and trust with others that's related to Scorpio. So they want commitment. They want to say I do. They want to consummate. They want to have babies. They want to create together. So Scorpio is, hey, let's make a commitment towards one another. Let's make this long lasting. But we all know that things don't always last. And then we've got the need for routine and proper care and extra protection with Pisces. The Pisces of the chart are sensitive ones. They're the ones we have to protect the most because they come into this world inundated. They can feel all of the world. They don't understand why we're not connected. They don't understand why we're all made different. They just kind of all want to be one. They want to be compassionate. They want to not be too personal. This is the least personal sign of the zodiac, is the Pisces, because life isn't personal. Life moves on. We live in this natural world with these natural laws that we cannot change. So while we have man-made laws with Saturn, Pisces, and Neptune bring natural law. So, with that, when we are dealing with things that we cannot control, the one thing we can control is our routine and taking care of ourselves. So that's what Pisces is trying to bring to our lives in this current state, which is like, man, when things are out of control like they are in this month, it feels like we're already in month 6, but we're only in month 3. We're realizing that we need to ramp up our routines in a particular way and to stop bad habits, because we've got to develop a level of protection, energetic protection, where we're not inundated by the world. We let the world in as we need. So a little extra stuff on Pisces. We'll talk about Pisces at the last class, but I like to talk about it quite a bit because we all have a Neptune in our charts. So again, zodiac signs are the how, planets are the what, and houses are where we do these things. So, we should go through the moon through the signs and the houses, and then we'll go a little deeper. So if you need me to stop or add a little extra to any of these things, let me know, but we'll get started. So when we have the moon in the first house or in the sign of Aries, this is going to be an extremely strong and resilient person who is not going to take no for an answer, who's going to be extremely strong and resilient. They have the need to separate and become their own. So you cannot really influence these people. They come here knowing exactly what they want to do. And if you kind of stand in the way of that, that's when their defenses come up. These moon and Aries people, or moon in the first house, they're very defensive. And their emotions can just come up out of nowhere, especially when it comes to their children or just, being in survival mode. Self-preservation is a big deal with the moon in the first house. With the moon in the first house, it's really important to be careful with how we use our words and how we use our emotions. Do we use them as weapons? Do we use them as resources? So if a mature and emotionally centered processing system needs to be established for these people. They need to have more even keel emotions and have solutions that are based around that. Their connection with their mother might not be as close. They might have maybe a little bit of battling with their mom or a lot of conflict, which is it, it happens, right? It happens for all of us. But with this one here, it may be kind of a longer lasting, more painful feeling because of the survival and the need to almost have to care for oneself and teach oneself how to defend and to keep safe boundaries. So it's important. So if you've got moon in Taurus or moon in the second house, this is a moon ruled by Venus. This is a moon that needs to be fed regularly. So these people often will work to the bone. They are constant grazers of making sure that they have the right resources. So they're workaholics. They tend to always need to make sure that their life is logical and that there's physical manifestations of, safety and wellness, that they can visually see this. So when you walk into these homes, they're elaborate, they're comfortable, they've got color, they've got style. With the moon here, we can expect that there's going to be a need to get close with the feminine and to envelop oneself, to understand the feminine voice. I say that because with a moon ruled by Venus, this person is going to have women around them all the time. And so healthy relationships to them, being able to intuit what other people need, whether man or woman. This is a very intuitive moon. The moon likes to also be in Taurus. So the moon likes to be in Cancer first, and the second one is Taurus. There's a food relational quality with this, nurturing, getting one's essential needs and resources met. As we talked about in the Taurus section, Taurus is the land of milk and honey. So with the moon in Taurus, these people need to have rich nourishment. They need to have, like I said, regular meals. If these people go without meals, they start to forget about their bodies and they start to spread themselves into other areas of life. And they often become really big in their physical appearance, because the richness of life and the sweetness of life that they're feeding on kind of tends to make them immobile after a while. So with the moon here, these people really need to understand their relationship to food and body movement, and not to overfeed or underfeed. So that's kind of a thing there. With the moon here, there's a lot of respect for one's mother. Maybe there was enough nourishment to a certain degree. Maybe this child feels satisfied in particular ways, that the mother was able to be resourceful. Mother was able to figure out how to make money on her own. And, when things were hard, mom was able to figure it out. Same with if you've got a moon in Aries. Mom is also very resourceful, strong and independent, but maybe not particularly feminine or touchy or huggy or those types of things. This mom might be more astute, more aggressive, more combative. Whereas the moon in Taurus, mommy's probably gonna give a little bit more grace and not come with the Mars so much, maybe come with Venus more. So I hope that makes sense. So if you've got a moon in Gemini or moon in the third house, these people with the relationship to their mothers is one of being able to see their mothers as like this multitasker, this person who's able to take in information. Maybe she is working at a bank. Maybe mom is actually dealing with money on a big level, or maybe mom's an educator. In any case, mom is looked to as a big source of learning. And maybe mom teaches street smarts to this person. With a moon in Gemini, these people need freshness. They need information to move quickly, to not stay stagnant. So these are people who constantly need to feed themselves in a way through information, through reading, through radio, through social media, through getting new ideas, new theories, new information. That's what keeps these people feeling satisfied, what keeps them feeling full. So when we think about the moon, we think about fullness, whether it's a new moon, which is barely anything, or the fullness that a moon can bring to our lives where we're illuminated. We're like, oh, wow, things are really coming together. I can see the light. So the moon brings these qualities um, to us, and it's important to connect to the moon and to know the moon sign of your friends, and because this is kind of their personal connection. When you know their moon sign, you know how they're needing to work in the world. So with a moon in Gemini, these children are always going to need to be in the car. These are the kids, these are the people that are always have a new car, or they always have a new pair of tennis shoes. Um, because Gemini represents the legs and the walking. And so these people are more modern. They're into fashion a little bit. They like to um, have, little tchotchkes and cute little things that they see on Instagram, or um, things that are in the now. So when you walk into the homes of these people, you're going to see a lot of trendy things, things that are like in the vein of what's happening now. And if you go into their house a year later, it might be completely different. So that's what the moon in Gemini brings. Let's see, what else can I think about? If the relationship to the mother, relationship to home. So these people are probably going to move a lot. They probably have moved from house to house, from school to school. Um, because their need to get different forms of information and to be around diversity is what feeds them. So these people are wanting to make sure to eat at different restaurants all the time, to get different cultures and diverse thought processes in their day to day, and to be immersed in people other than themselves. So the moon in Gemini is very particular in that way. But when the moon is in Cancer, this is this is where the moon loves to be, right? With a moon in Cancer or a moon in fourth house, I'm going to say that there is a big time either issue with the connection of the mother, or there's such a deep connection with the mother and the ancestors of your family lineage. So let me explain. With the moon here, there is a deep need to get in touch with indigenous roots, with understanding where you essentially come from, your clan, and in the best way, not in the way that we remember referring to clans, but what's another word for clan? Family. Um, the group of people that you run with, the people that make you feel like you are who you are. So the moon here or in Cancer deeply needs to immerse themselves in what their grandmothers have done, what their mothers have been taught, if those things are healthy and not troubling. And that can be a thing with this placement as well. This thing where maybe this person didn't get anything passed down to them. Maybe they're even an orphan. They don't know where their heritage comes from, and they're trying to find a sense of belonging. And so they're born with this moon here so that they can come into this life and develop what it means to be in family, what it means to have a family. Um, are we born with that family? Is that the biological family? Or is that the family that we make? Which one is more true? Which one is more us? And I think it's our own personal our own personal needs and wants that dictate that. But when I talk about family, I talk about the healthy relationship to family, and the way that we've personally cultivated that. So with a moon here, um, I would I have seen a lot of people feel like their mothers were kind of overwhelming emotionally, um, where moms are kind of really divulging a lot of personal information, a lot of things that a child doesn't need to know. Maybe the mom isn't actually the mothering kind. And so, that's kind of what gets passed down is like, not being able to cook, not being able to work a kitchen, um, not being able to nurture a baby. With the moon here, there is conflict with that. Um, and having one's essential needs met by others, but then this greater lesson of, once we're of age, we're allowed to parent ourselves, and we're allowed to provide that nurturing environment. We can kind of do over with that. So with the moon in the fourth house or moon in Cancer, there's a deep relationship to kind of reparenting oneself and finding solace in just the self. So moving on to Leo, when we've got a moon in Leo, this is a fire sign, so this person's going to be vibrant. They need to be center stage. These are the kids that are always laughing, trying to make mom happy. Um, I would say a lot of times, depending on different chart placements, the moon, mom with a moon in Leo, the mom is going to be gregarious. She's going to be huge. She's going to take up a lot of space. And so this person might relate to their mother as like, wow, she's this big sun in the sky. How am I ever gonna match that? So there's this level of a child looking to their mother as this big source of inspiration. Someone that tries to push them towards their essential nature and their creative outlets. A lot of Moon and Leo people um, will feel comfortable being out on stage and performing. They have very expressive faces. These are people that you cannot tell to be quiet. In fact, you wouldn't want them to be quiet because they have a lot to say, very expressive. Might be the class clown, might be the kids that get in trouble. Um, but with the moon in Leo, there's a personal sense and a personal need to get out and to live in one's creative integrity, to feel comfortable with expressing one's essential nature, just being who they are, and to be accepted by the group. So, Moon and Leo people are looking for their family too, in a way. And that's why the fourth and fifth houses, Cancer and Leo, are considered the anchor of the chart, the personal signs, um, the signs that need to find a sense of belonging, and to find their own tribe so that they're able to verify their presence in the world, to make them feel important, to make them feel like it's not just them. Because these signs can tend to feel that way, can feel very solitary if they're not accepted, very solitary if they're not able to find people who can adapt to them or meet them emotionally. So Moon in the fifth house is very emotional. Um, and the way to support someone with the moon here is to always encourage and to help these people see themselves and to feel comfortable expressing. Um, and with the moon here, there could be either a big focus on having children or a huge focus on not. So usually planets in the fifth and sixth houses, this is where childbirth kind of gets a little like, whether one personally wants to have them or not. And I've seen that in many charts of people who don't have children, they have a very heavy sixth house, or they have some planetary lineups in the fifth house that are just makes a woman feel like, well, what about my career? I got to raise kids and do all of these routine things that a woman is supposed to do. With the moon in Leo, this woman is not to be in the kitchen cooking. She is supposed to have the kind of life that she wants to live or he wants to live, which is to be out of that traditional role and to not do what everybody else is doing in terms of that. So like I said, this moon in Leo is going to be, center stage. They're probably going to be a leader, right? And when you're in big positions of authority or you're working, having children, family life, being at home with them becomes a challenge. So having children and relationship to children become a challenge in the fifth and the sixth house. So I just wanted to mention that. Um, yeah, feeding these children would definitely mean feeding them creatively, and giving them free reign to do what they need to do to find that. So um, keeping them in a box is not going to help. All right, let's move to Moon in the sixth house, or Moon in Virgo. I love Moon in Virgo people. They are people I can trust. Um, I say Moon in Virgo is a very logical moon. It is a moon that needs routine. They need a sense of a clean atmosphere, things to be put in their places, um, because this sixth house energy, Virgo energy, comes in a person's body as conflict. It comes into the body as, I got a problem I need to solve. So if you have a planet in the sixth house, or if you have a planet in Virgo, you're going to be dealing with um, the mundane parts of life in a way that might overload one system. So, overworking can be a big deal here, but also being very disciplined, being able to be a good manager, being able to manage their own emotions very well. With the moon in Virgo, these people are not allowing their emotions to run them, and a lot of times this is considered the mental moon. This is the moon of mental processing. So we're not going to sit in our emotions all day. In fact, one Virgo said, "Ew, emotions," to me one day, and I just giggled like, yeah, they're not fun. And so a Virgo will tend to just move on from that and go do something that is useful. Well, if I can't fix my own problems, I'm going to help fix others. And so this moon is the doctor of the chart. This moon is the one who's going to use the proper instruments, the proper routines, the proper habits to bring someone to health. Um, so I always liken the Virgo aspect of being a good maybe surgeon, but the Cancer is going to be the bedside manner, the nurse, the caregiver um, of the chart. So there's a very caring aspect with this moon in Virgo, or moon in the sixth house. There's a lot of needing to make sure that things work, solving problems before they come, um, having a very close relationship to one's body. With a moon here, people feel everything. And they can sometimes be quite sickly people, because they are trying to solve their own issues. They come into this world with a need to figure out how to bring oneself back to health. And so, just through trial and error and having this personal relationship with it, they become masters. If you've known anybody to have strong Virgo placements, or a moon in Virgo, that you can go to them with any essential issue and they're gonna know a pathway to get out. So this is a very functional, very aesthetic kind of moon. They are very based around the way things look. So their home is going to be formed, it's going to be function, it's going to be natural. Um, and things are going to be put in their place. They're going to be put in a nice, neat little box. Um, because when they're put in the box and they're put away, that's not something I need to think about. So I can start to deal with the rest of the day. And so that's why routine and having cleanliness and all of that is very important with a moon in Virgo, or a moon in the sixth house. Alrighty. There's a moon in Libra, or a moon in the seventh house. So with a moon in the seventh house, these people are very much aware of what they're not getting. And the reason is because the seventh house brings this nature of seeing what one has, but also being able to see what one needs by looking at other people and seeing where their resources are, seeing what they get. And this moon is going to notice that there's some essential needs that they're not getting, the relationship quality that they're looking for, because the seventh house is relationship, and so is the sign of Libra. So when you have the moon in Libra or the seventh house, you are in need of deep connection, of exchanging ideas and exchanging resource. And usually that resource is through words. Um, a lot of times it is through, goods and services. But when we're able to meet with someone and have an exchange that's reciprocal, that's what this person is looking for. They want to express in a way and be met in that same exact way. So reciprocation is what these people are looking for, most definitely. Now, this is a moon that is here and there and everywhere. And so, they are constantly seeing where their values lie. And, with values and the way that we think about them, they can change, right? And so these values change quite a bit. And with the moon here, a mom would need to recognize that this child needs an influx of different energy in their life. They need to be brought around people who are inspirational, who are resourceful in their own right, right? And these people would need to be shown how to have close relationship with other people. They need to see their mom have a good relationship. And so when the moon is here, relationship is all one is thinking about. It's all they really essentially need. It's just having that deep connection. If mom didn't give it, then where else are we going to get it, And with the moon in Libra, these people are looking, they're looking here. They're looking to see who's going to accept me for who I am, who's going to reciprocate what I've got to give, who's going to meet me halfway. So this is a very delicate placement. With the moon in Libra or the moon in the seventh house, these people need to feel like they're going to be able to get what they need. And if they don't, it becomes a battle. It becomes hardship and becomes a personal identity. And that's what we don't want, right? But it happens. So, what is the mother like in this respect? Well, the mom might be maybe a little unstable mentally, emotionally. Maybe you can't really count on her. You don't know whether she's here or there. With a moon here, you know, the mother is very much trying to find her grounding, very much trying to figure out where her loyalties lie and where her development and relational qualities are coming from. So she's so caught up in that sometimes she misses nurturing the baby, because she's kind of wrapped up in her own relationship dynamics and not being met. So that kind of creates this kind of like, where we're just kind of pushing it from generation to generation in little bits of ways. So as you can see, when a moon is on these angles, whether it's in Aries, whether it's in the fourth house, whether it's in the seventh house, 10th house, it becomes a big deal, right? Like it becomes bigger than all of the other houses when it comes to our personal relationships and qualities. Like they start to kind of take really big presence in our lives. So if you've got, planets in any of these four cardinal houses, you're definitely going to feel it more extreme than the rest of us. I just wanted to say that. So if you've got moon in Scorpio or moon in the eighth house, these are our detectives of the chart. They love mystery. They love being skeptical. They know what someone's doing behind closed doors. If you want to know the juicy details, These are the people to go to. They know what's happening. These are moons that don't trust very easily. And we have to be careful of overfeeding these moons and also underfeeding. So with the moon in Taurus, it's opposing this moon in Scorpio. So feeding, whether it be too much or too little, can still be an issue here. I would say overfeeding. Excuse me, underfeeding. Yes. So with the moon in Scorpio, these people have maybe not had a good relationship to food. Or maybe fighting to find where their essential needs were going to come from. In relationship to the mother, this is probably one of the hardest placements. With a moon in Scorpio, these people tend to need the very close and intimate proximity of mother, but may not get it. And they may not get it because mom's not actually physically there, or mom is unable to commit to the child, to commit to being there with the child, to follow through with them, to stand there and watch them and be with them. So they might see mom come in and out and, you know, maybe be overpowering. These moms can tend to be the ones who kind of reign their power, can maybe disempower their children through particular words or not fully understanding or seeing their children. Moon and Scorpio people can feel misunderstood, can feel rejected, can feel like they're not getting the right experience in life. They're not getting those intimate connections that they need. So it feels rough here. When we think about moon and our relationship to home, if it's in the eighth house or Scorpio, these people are probably going to have big issues with homelessness, with, may or may not having a home at one time, having to live with other people, having to utilize other people's resources. So there's this personal connection to understanding that I need more. I need more here. And when we're dealing with these parts of the chart, 7, 8, and 9 houses, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, these are the three houses of more. You cannot feed, you cannot give these people enough. They will always need more. And so with a moon in Scorpio, it's kind of hard to satisfy these children. And these adults, because of that need that that's not good enough. I need more. I need more of what you've got. I need more commitment. I need more money. So there's that. How do you feed these moons? You don't keep secrets from them, and you're honest and open with these people. And the level of trust that can be developed with a moon in Scorpio can be very deep, and it can be very transformative. Let me check the chat real quick here. Okay. Kelly, what do you mean about more just when the moon is there? Are you referring to the cardinal houses, the four angles?
When you just said that those last three houses
Yes.
need more, more, more,
Yeah,
do you mean
7, 8.
just moons are there or just those are the signs in general
Those are the
as the sun?
signs in general. Yeah. So if you have a moon there, it's personal. It's
Mm.
now my personal identity to have more on a level that other people probably don't have. Um, and these are the people who are able to identify what other people need. They're able to see that pretty well, based on their own personal experiences of not having. Okay, Moon in Scorpio. Nourishment, nurturing. Yeah. So one last thing about this moon in Scorpio, or moon in the eighth house, is these people feel hurt. These people feel pained. Um, and so there's something in there that they're personally connecting to that is painful, that helps them continue to move, that gives them life. And that kind of sounds a little morbid, but sometimes that's just how people operate. When they are faced with nothing, they create something out of nowhere. And that's kind of what Scorpio in the eighth house brings to us, is kind of creating something out of nothing. And Moon in Scorpio does that too. Okay. So with the moon in Sagittarius or moon in the ninth house, these are the philosophers of our charts. They have come into this life with a keen sense of knowledge that they have no idea where it came from. It's just this almost like indigenous knowledge that's bestowed upon them. The way that uh, ideologies and the way that religion and spirituality are commingled in the way they work. These people are very able to speak to that. And they personally connect to, learning about others, learning about different cultures. Um, feeding these moons is taking them on a trip, taking them across a bridge over water, so that they can get a different experience of life, so they can feel that they're out of their normal regular environments, and they're feeling like they're able to take charge of where they reside, over how they move in the world. So these are the travelers. I know a moon in Sagittarius, and you just cannot get her to stay still. And her head is so full of knowledge that it just kind of spouts off as she's talking. She just sounds like this very wise old woman, and she's young. So, in order to feed these children, in order to make sure that they feel nurtured, is is this constant need of making sure that they've understood what they've been taught, and then being able to go out and spread that. So they not only take in the information and learn and identify what ideologies and religions that they believe in, but they also disseminate this. So they kind of, are able to get out in front of people and talk about their beliefs, talk about what moves them, what's meaningful to them. Very, very expressive moon. Um, Probably one of the most extreme moons, because when we're dealing with the sign of Sagittarius or the planet of Jupiter, we're dealing with the measure of extremes. This is the most extreme sign of the zodiac, and that's because the extreme helps determine where the boundary lies. So these people with this moon in Sagittarius or moon in the ninth house will oftentimes need to say things in the most extreme way in order to determine what the boundary is, and then they will back off. And this extremity is the only way that they're able to test where other people are and their belief systems, whether to test the authenticity of someone. So they're really looking for authentic interactions. They're looking for people to not overly react to the way that they are, um, because their essential nature is just like, oh, I'm having a good time. I'm the life of the party. This can go on, and I say these extreme things, but I don't mean it. It's not personal. Um, so there's that energy with the moon here. And these people are always needing to either educate others or be educated. So feeding these moons is giving them lots of good documentaries and the opportunity to learn about other people, other cultures, saving up money so these kids can go to college and have an extended education. Um, and with a mom with the moon in Sagittarius, this mom, her belief system sits on one side and doesn't move. she sits on one side of the extreme to the point where it's too much for the child, and they're having to kind of balance that out, um, and maybe even outgrow their parent in some way with the moon here, because when we are stuck on one side, or only able to see one side of a thing, you know the way that life works and polarity works, we get that opposite and equal reaction. And so these children or these people will sit on the other side of that to try to bring equilibrium. And so a lot of times, if mom is too far this way, then child has to kind of do things on their own, and raise themselves, or even help raise their parents. Can be very religious households, um, and have a very personal sense of connection to religion, the Bible, um, or any of our spiritual sects or whatever. It definitely has to deal with belief, with the moon in Sagittarius, or the ninth house. Okay, so when we have the moon in the 10th house, or moon in Capricorn, these are the people who are the diligent leaders of the chart. They are the ones who establish the rules and the regulations, and they make sure that these rules are followed. They know there's a right way to do things and the wrong way to do things. So when there's a strong Capricorn or Saturn influence, 10th house influence, you've got a lot of planets there or something, um, the way things need to be done, the way that it was intended to be set up, those rules very, very much need to be followed. These people feel very uneasy, when rules are broken, their own personal rules are broken, or their habits get out of control. With the moon in Capricorn, these people are diligent workers. They're builders, they're the construction workers of the chart. They're able to build a really nice solid foundation, because these people are ambitious. These people want something out of their lives, but it's not this quick, fiery, let's get it done. It's slower process because it's earth. So it takes a long time, to build, and to let things go at its own pace. So this is a very developmental type of area in the chart. If we think about a Saturn return, we have two good ones in our lives that we really remember. Um, Saturn makes its full revolution in about 27 to 30 years. So, when we're thinking about Saturn in our lives, we're thinking about, like, oh, it's the long haul. What's tested, what's worked over a long amount of time. And when the moon is here, that's what they're very much needing in their life. They're looking for something that has outlived, the current leaders, that's proven to be tested and tried. They're looking for credible sources of leadership, and they are needing a very structured, uh, kind of existence, where they know whether things are right and wrong. There's no gray area, and they know how to move. With a mother, um, with this aspect, so say if person has moon in Capricorn or moon in the 10th house, their mother is probably going to be a helicopter mom to a certain degree. They're going to want these children to rise to the occasion, to be a leader, to be excellent, to always strive for the most. So these children are going to be put on an immense amount of pressure to perform, to be better than, maybe better than the rest of the family, to be the best child. Generally, with strong Capricorn signatures or moon in Capricorn, these might be the firstborn children, and the children that have to raise their brothers and sisters, the ones who have to take prominent authority right out of the get-go. So they're very responsible. They shouldn't have to be in certain ways, but this is their personal identification, and so um, they're really able to bring boundary and structure to a situation in a way that could work for all. how I would feed a child or a person with a moon in Capricorn is setting up proper boundaries, letting them know which rules that they need to know so that they can break them if they need to. And I would always need to make sure that these people knew that they had their own authority, that I couldn't take anything from them, um, that I couldn't make them feel any kind of way, that they are who they are at their essential nature, and they are their own authority. No one is over you, no law is over you. Um, so, those are kind of like ideas around this. When a moon is in Capricorn, having issues with authority figures is huge. Huge, huge, huge. You've got any kind of planets in the 10th house, you're going to question whatever people tell you to the highest degree. Um, and that's because you're really just trying to see, are you moral? Are you ethical? Are you right for the job? You know, are you the right kind of leader for us? So those are kind of questions with a that someone with a moon in Capricorn would ask. Um, so when you have a moon in Aquarius or the 11th house, um, you know, finding a sense of belonging with a group of people or finding oneself um, in a group where someone feels safe and understood is what a moon in the 11th house or a moon in Aquarius needs. They need group dynamic. They need to feel like they're connected to more than just family. They're interconnected and part of a network of other people. So, you know, it includes our friends. This is the house of friends. So, if someone's got a moon in Aquarius or in the 11th house, their personal identification is going to come from their friend groups, the places they belong to, the allegiances that they pledge. This is where they're going to get validated. This is where they're going to feel safe in the world. Um, they need to have a constant reflection um, of what's happening in the world, but in a dynamic where it's able to be discussed and improved. So these people are improvement oriented. They're always wanting to elevate or change their personal situations. These are people that like to live in the city. They need high rises. They need opportunities, civilization. They need to be able to take a plane to go somewhere. Moon in Aquarius, they're abrupt. They will move and change with a quickness. So you can't really hold them down. Um, Keeping them to a routine might be a little difficult, but they're very intelligent. Intelligence and using the mind is how this person is personally identified. So, you know, a lot of close connections to be made where someone would feel safe, where someone could develop emotions for other people. Um, that's all done in a way that's not solitary. So if I had a child with a moon in Aquarius, in which I do, how would I feed my child? Um, Boy, you know, when it comes to making sure that she's nurtured and satisfied, I have always had to make sure that she understands that she needs to accept herself, and that is what allows people to accept her. This is a very unique moon. You're not really going to fit in with a lot of groups. You have to choose wisely your friends and the people that you run with. And it takes a long time with the moon here to get that right. There's a lot of friendship issues and not, you know, being thrown out of the group, being marginalized, maybe from your family. So it takes a long time to find the right connection. And when it's finally found, these relationships, these friendships really feed this child. So, you know, over the years, I've had to develop a friendship with her, and to pull back some of my need to be dominant mom. And through this friendship, she's developed a lot of trust. This child will tell me absolutely anything because I've had to develop a different way of mothering her. It doesn't look like what other people have told me it should look like. And that's very unique to a moon in the 11th house or moon in Aquarius. These children do not have the same upbringing as other people. And so these children, these people need to be reassured that their life and their emotional connections look different than other people's. It's not really based on emotion because we're dealing with air, we're dealing with the mental. So when the moon is in a mental sign, we're always going to go for, well, I can understand where they're coming from. I can logically explain that away. Um, I can accept that, I'm not going to take it personal. So a lot of times these people will need to not only get right with their relationships, but they'll have to understand when it's time to separate, when it's time to move away from a group that's toxic. So these people are going to find themselves in situations where they need to develop a personal identity within the group, know who they are, not get lost in it. Um, these people are finger food eaters. They generally will not like to share the plate that they have in front of them. So maybe no Ethiopian food with these people. Um, Eating with your fingers might be a little weird for them because they are civilized and because they're living in the city and doing a thing. Eating with a fork and spoon is more normal, is more preferred. So I have seen these people kind of get grossed out, or a moon in Virgo. These two signs will just get grossed out about the exchange of other people's stuff in their stuff. Like they don't like their food to touch. uh, and I think that's it with the moon in Aquarius. Yeah. And lastly, the moon in Pisces. The moon in Pisces is so interesting. These children come in with an essential, like a lot of essential needs, but they won't ask for them. And the reason is because essentially they're still trying to figure out what their needs are. They're trying to separate themselves from the collective, which is the 12th house and Neptune, all that all that free love and all of us coming together. This moon in Pisces is just entrenched in it. They don't know who they are. And they're okay with being a part of the group. They don't need to be identified as separate. They're able to share. They're able to really not care about um, their own personal needs sometimes because they are concerned. So these are the kids that will, take all the snacks out of the cupboard and go take them to the kids at school and give all their money away and all of their. My grandson, moon in Pisces, took a brand new pair of shoes that didn't fit him because he was waiting to grow into them and just gave them to the school bully. Gave them to the school bully because he wanted the bully to be nice to him. And that was his way of defending himself. And he's just a really sweet soul and is trying to figure out how to be connected to other people. And so a lot of times people look at them like, man, you're weird. You're not like the rest of us. What do you mean you don't like this and you don't like that and you don't do this? What do you mean you just like to hang out in nature and play with animals and care about dinosaurs? So these are the signs, moon and Pisces people, they care about the natural world and natural law more than anything else. They care about the way that the planet operates. They're playing with bugs. They're trying to understand the larger scope of the world and how it interacts with us. So they're very nature centered. Um, they are closely related to and understand how we use natural resources and the abuse and neglect of them. So these people will generally fight those battles. Um, with a moon here, I would suspect that this person would have a close and intimate relationship what mom knowing that mom is not close. So there's a separation with the moon in Pisces. Um, Mom is not there. Maybe mom is sick. Um, Mom might be on drugs or could be trapped into her own situations, caught up in her own daily habits that have run amok. And so now this baby comes into this world and they're really looking for someone to stay and someone to be there and to envelop them and to include them in the day to day. And sometimes these people with the moon in Pisces, they may not feel that with their moms. They may not, you know, get that kind of personal attention that they're looking for. And so they go out and find it. And these people have a lot of friends, and these people are able to, um, over time figure out that it's okay to be weird, that it's okay to go out and find people who are like you, who are quirky, who um, are looking to experience life and to not be so personally directed. So these people are, you know, the ones who are considering all of our movements in the world and how that affects the world and not just our personal self. So, they're very much in the vein of, how do we heal everybody? How do we all get health care? Um, how do we all get our needs met? And with Pisces, it's like they don't understand why there's the hardship in the first place because we're so smart, we're so, elevated as a group of people. It kind of makes no sense why these issues still occur. Um, and so there's a lot of confusion and trying to bring um, more understanding and maybe a global awareness towards it. Um, so people with moon in Pisces or a strong 12th house, um, they're very influential in the larger scope. They're not just influencing society, they're influencing like a larger concept, a world concept. Um, when we get here, we'll talk more about it, and I think it will make more sense. Because I think if I keep talking about it, I might confuse you more. So, do we have any questions on the moon and its placements? Yeah, go ahead.
So when you talk about how mom is in each house, I have two sisters and I have their charts. And so I'm listening to you talk about how mom is, and that's for them. And then, of course, I have a different moon.
Yeah.
So it's like a mom mosaic. We can just get a whole picture of mom from our siblings.
No, it's the way that you perceive your relationship with your mom. So, say you have say you have the moon in Aquarius, but your sister has a moon in Scorpio. The way she views her relationship with mom is different than yours because you guys are having you're sharing an experience, but you're completely different people, and the way to process it is different. So I wouldn't say that like um, both sisters' moons are reflective of your experience. I would just take your moon, and that's your experience. But when you look at sister's moon, then you can tell, oh, that's how she felt about mom. That was her
Right.
relationship with mom. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though, because I can see how my mom is like that, different ways.
Yes.
But, and I maybe didn't experience it as much as my sisters did, but I can see how she was like that. So it's really interesting.
Mm, I like that. Thank you. Very
I
refreshing.
also have another question, which I just want to ask before before I forget. It's about empty houses.
Yes.
And last week you said we could do some math and solve a problem. I'm
Yes.
dying to know what that is.
You're the math gal. I know you like math. Okay, so when we have an empty house, let me pull up my wheel real quick so I can just show you what it looks like. Okay, so say we have an empty eighth house. When we look at this eighth house, it's ruled by two signs. Like, why is it like this? Well, right now we're reading Sun on first. Let me change the house system so that it's kind of more aligned to what we're generally looking at from day to day, which is Coke. That's what I like to use. There we go. And we still see houses with two signs. So I would like to address that. So let's look at the sixth house. Say that we've got an empty house, but we've got Capricorn ruling half of the house, and we've got Aquarius ruling the other. Now, when we see Capricorn, what planet is associated with Capricorn? We haven't gone up to Capricorn yet, but it is Saturn. So Saturn is going to be a place that we look to find answers for this portion of our sixth house. So when we think about sixth house, we're going to think, oh man, my routine is really out of control. My health is out of balance. I'm having a lot of pain and the house is empty. Okay, so let me look to Saturn first, because Saturn's going to show me where I'm stuck, where I'm unable to get my body moving again. What lesson do I need to learn from that Saturn? But also, Aquarius is there. So, all right, when we've looked at Saturn, we should look to Uranus because Uranus is ruled by Aquarius. So not only Saturn, but Uranus will kind of, and their placements will give us an idea of, all right, well, now I see where I'm stuck. So how do I elevate myself? How do I turn my brain into problem solving mode with Uranus? And so we look to Uranus and we see, depending on where you have Uranus in your chart. I have Uranus in Sagittarius in the sixth house. So generally, in order to change my daily habits, I got to go on a trip, because that helps bring me out of my normal routine, helps me look at where I'm, blind because I'm just on auto drive. And Uranus says, hey, in order to solve some of your problems, maybe you need to educate yourself better. Maybe you need to find more education. And so does that kind of
Yeah,
make a little
that's
sense?
great.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. When we get to the sixth house, that's the house of mathematics, and we'll practice this together and see how we can interplay this with your own charts. So, very, very good question. Empty houses, while it seems like nothing's going on, there's a lot of things going on if we take a deeper look. All right. So we're going to talk about polarity, which we have just a bit. When we talk about the other end of Cancer, we're looking at the 10th house, we're looking at Capricorn, we're looking at the top of the chart, the leader, the natural born, person who comes into this world and takes authority and to make sure everybody is managed well, and the person who's in charge. They're independent, they're obedient. These are people that you're able to militarize. Um, this is the sign that really follows rules and regulations and handbooks very well. So if you are starting something and need it to have integrity, credibility, moral function, someone with a lot of Capricorn would be it. Capricorn is where we make our life work, where we are tested to the highest degree. When we are tested in life, we're tested in many different ways, through our personal relationships, through our families. But when we get to the social world, when we've got to go out into the workplace, when we've got to start taking charge of our lives, it becomes a real test on whether we are up for the challenge, whether we're properly educated, whether we're an authority in the subject. So when there's Capricorn placements or, stuff going on in the 10th house, these people are constantly being tested. They're constantly being asked to show themselves, to achieve, to show their answers. You showing your work. You wouldn't be able to give an answer with a math problem without showing your work here. So, these people are very focused on what's right. Now, when we think about Cancer, it is the opposite of that. It's, when society and life and all of that isn't putting expectations on us, who are we naturally at our essential core? And that's what Cancer is trying to bring in. It's trying to remind us that we're intuitive, that we know something about life without having to explicitly explain it or have conscious reasoning around it. So that's why, this intuition that comes from the moon or the sign of Cancer, it always seems so whimsical. It seems like, wow, are they psychic? And it's like, no, these people, this sign is able to tap into an emotional current. If you think about the flow of excuse me, if we think about the tides of the moon, these tides are controlled. The tides of the ocean are tied to the moon, right? And so when you're able to feel on a deep level, there's this current that you're following where you're not only feeling your own, but you're kind of feeling that of the world and the changes that we're going through in this lunar cycle of 28 days. Um, these are the people who will always ask you, are you okay? How do you feel? Which is such a wonderful thing to be asked. Um, what ways do you feel dependent? With where you look and where Cancer is ruling in your chart, those are ways that we can find ourselves in independency mode, where we really need someone else to give that thing to us because it's not something that we have developed in ourselves yet, or we're looking to, or maybe we just need a safe space for that to develop. Um, so these are the natural caregivers, the nurturers, the nurses, the pharmacists of our chart, Cancers. And um, this is, you know, basically how you feel about your family. In the sign of Cancer, the sign of Cancer is obsessed with a connection to family of some sort. Um, and this sign is particular. They have particularities. You cannot just buy them a gift based on what you feel. They are very much going to need for someone to see and to recognize something about them and to notice what they need. Um, so there's many stories that I can tell, but if you do not get it right with a Cancer and those details, they can close up and never come back out again. So them being seen, understood, felt, paid attention to, those are essential qualities for developing a level of trust. So, you know, there's a kind of a long process with learning to trust. It doesn't come easily, and with the sign of Cancer, it can be our mother, it can be her responses to us, um, and how her emotions kind of teach us how to regulate our feelings. So the moon and the fourth house and Cancer can bring these ideas of like, how do we manage our own stress? How do we take care of ourselves when mom, Capricorn, isn't there to reign authority over us and tell us what to do? When there's nobody around, who are we? How are we taking care of ourselves? How are we nurturing ourselves? So, there's this level where Cancer is making us be responsible for ourselves and our emotions, but the sign of Capricorn almost makes us responsible for other people's emotions. So, we're running up against being personal with ourselves and then thinking about what society needs personally, and always kind of being at a balance with that. How to balance home life with work life, how to balance mom and dad. Usually, Saturn or Capricorn is what they say referenced as the father, as in the chart. I'm going to show you something a little different. Maybe we could have a discussion about it. Um, but in any case, Capricorn is the strong relationship to the dominant parent, or maybe the father, but could be the mother. And Cancer is the relationship to mom and the flow of life and the opening, the biological connection, the early bonding, whereas Capricorn is societal influence and the way we bond later in life. So that's why it's developmental. Cancer is kind of the early stage, Capricorn is the test, that's the ending stage, and we're kind of always oscillating between the two. So with Saturn, we're looking wherever that is in your chart, it is determining what you seek in terms of credible sources of structure and stability and ethical treatment and moral value. So if you have Saturn in Scorpio, you are looking for people who are going to have the right uses of power and may come up against and struggle with people who try to take power over you, people who try to control you and manipulate you in ways that are dark, ways that are taking instead of giving. Um, and so, if you're kind of feeling like karmically there isn't something right, mm, things don't feel balanced, you would look to Saturn because Saturn is the even give and take. It is do unto others and have them do unto you. Um, it is, the way that we are influenced by people that we really admire, but also just social behaviors and what we pick up along the way because we have to. Saturn is the patriarchy. Saturn is, this thing that is, going off of history. It's old, it's dated, it represents time that has passed, that, it's tried and true, but it's not always going to be that way. Change needs to come. So the moon is going to bring that change. Moon is going to remind you that, you know, every 2.5 days, the moon changes a sign. So there can't be any possible way that things are going to continue to be the same. The moon helps us recognize that there's change. Saturn also brings to us, where in the chart are where we cannot blindly follow somebody's advice, what they have for us, what they think about us. So if you've got, let's say, Saturn in the fourth house, you'll not blindly follow what your family tells you that you should do. And when it comes to tradition, family lineage, yeah, you could care less. What you really want is to establish your own. So, you know, I have Saturn in the fifth house. So I cannot blindly follow someone else's creative direction. It makes me feel like I can just jump right out of my Capricorn skin. Capricorn represents the skin on our bodies. So Saturn, Capricorn is a very physical manifestation of, where we've been, the hardships of life, taking our own authority. It's where we invest in more of ourselves. And it's the world's test of where we've decided to come out in the world and say, hey, I know this thing. And it's what society expects from you in terms of, what influence are they looking to you for? So if I have Saturn in Scorpio, people are going to look to me as, well, when you don't have anything, what do you do? Who do you go to? What are your resources? So I've got to, as a Saturn person, figure out how to serve the world and show them when there is nothing, we can absolutely find a way. So play with that in your chart. But when we're talking about the moon and her 28-day cycle and the fact that she's so moving, how do you control that? How do you control emotion? You don't. You're in it. You're there, you're present through it, and you're trying your best to find your own stability. And you're trying to get by in life without having someone be over you in that Saturn way. The moon wants us to very much realize ourselves and where our personal power comes from and to take our own authority. So that, we have to do that in our familial lives. When we turn a certain age, we rebel. We want to leave the house, and we take our own authority in that way. The moon is how we respond to our emotions and the emotions of others. It's our reactional qualities of life. It is how we soothe and nurture ourselves, um, and the natural caregivers of of the zodiac. They are the ones who are going to give the most brilliant bedside manner. They're really careful with people. And lastly, let's talk about the houses. So, if you look in your own chart, when you look at the fourth house, the sign that's there, and you see any planets there, you're going to look to the fourth house because you're going to look to see how was my early experience with mom? How did my home feel? Was it Aries? Was it chaotic and every man for himself, or was it really Capricorn and kind of stable and routined and that type of thing? The fourth house is where we find solutions to find a safe environment for ourselves and to learn to have a healthy emotional reaction and interaction with life. So if we're just feeling like, man, am I being really immature about this? I feel like a child when it comes. Why are they treating me like a child? Why are you not treating me correctly? You're going to look in the fourth house for that. Um, the fourth house is constant adjustments, constant fluctuations, and rhythm changes because we're dealing with lunar aspects that are constantly in fluctuation, flow, and move. So the fourth house is our sense of belonging. Who are our people? Where is our tribe? Who do we consider family? It's spiritual and it's ancestral. It's something that, is a part of our DNA, is our biological makeup. And so, what are some of those ancestral customs that you were born with that you can turn to for safety, for comfort? So, I have Virgo in the fourth house. So, like I said earlier, I love Virgo people. They make me feel very safe. So, when I am in emotion central and I can't seem to figure it out, I gotta clean my house. I gotta get into my routine and I've got to figure out how I'm gonna make things look good. And then my nervous system will calm down and then I'll be able to react from a place of emotional maturity. So when I look to my fourth house, I'm looking for how do I properly digest things? To have the right reaction to things, to give myself the time to process hardship or process when I'm happy. Do I just let the happiness go away and I don't see it for a while, or do I let it stay with me? You know, um, it's having some self-awareness in the fourth house. In which ways are you self-aware? And the fourth house is the kingdom of the stomach. Um, Now, Cancer, the moon in the fourth house, I'll just say the sign of Cancer in the fourth house will directly be related to the digestive system, the belly, and the breasts. These will be very prominent on a person's body. When they have heavy Cancer placements, they'll usually be very heavily endowed, or they'll have a nice, soft, round belly that's graceful and beautiful. Maybe their bodies might be a little fuller because they're kind of representing that like ethereal mother. There's Cancers are the mothers of the chart. And so when we think about mom, we don't think about her as this skinny, well-to-do, primped person. We think of her as her natural self, her being allowed to be who she is and imperfections and all. So when we are needing to get in close relationship with our emotions and to be right with them and to be able to self-soothe in a healthy way, we've got to address what's going into the belly because our bellies and our brains are linked, just like our legs and our brains are linked. What we put in our body and how we move our bodies, it really it aids in emotional support for ourselves and for others. So when you're not eating, you're hangry, and you're not able to be kind and gentle and understanding is what kind of Cancer brings to the wheel. They're the kind ones. Um, when they like you, of course. If they don't like you, beware. And so for the 10th house is where we exercise our authority, where we exchange our perceptions of the world, and we take charge. So if you are looking for, man, I'm looking to influence a new set of people, or I'm trying to test something, we're going to look to the 10th house and try to see where we can get that from. The 10th house is our cultural and societal norms, the dictated behavior that's acceptable, that we're allowed to function with. Um, it's where societies and the expectations of our life have shaped who we are. So no longer are we just thinking about home, but we're also thinking about the exterior world. It's hard to be a human. It's hard to distinguish what we need for ourselves and then to also show up for the world and to know what's needed. It's a lot of influx. And so what these houses are trying to bring is a level of peace and inner authority so that we can regulate our emotions and stay even. And in the 10th house is where we socialize, where we become the person that people are looking for, the people that want to hear from you are here. This is where you become become part of the larger fabric of life. So you might interact more with the people in your neighborhood. You might become more community oriented. You might start taking charge or start a new group or something in that way to help add to social order. The 10th house is where we realize our failures, the failure of ourselves and those that we look to. So if you're having a transit in the 10th house, say a planet, an outer planet, a slower moving planet, Jupiter, Saturn per se, if that is crossing over your 10th house, you will generally have an experience where someone that you really looked up to has now fallen from your grace. You have now finally realized that this God, this person that you put on a pedestal, they are now no longer having the same kind of authority. And it happens with all children, it happens with all adults in all kinds of relationships. So I can probably guarantee that if any of you has had a falling out in some kind of way, I know that Saturn was making some kind of change. 10th house was making some kind of change for you, where you regained your own authority by removing someone from the pedestal. So the 10th house is a sign, or the area that, where we perceive authority, like we talked about. But it's also representative of tradition, of our grandparents, the old ways of living, and, just bringing what's tried and true and what works. But as we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot of things that aren't working, and Saturn is in Pisces currently. So there's this level of, we don't see any credible sources of good leadership right now. It's all faulty. It's all losing its grounding. And so right now we're holding out because we are trying to figure out who the leader is. We are surrounded by things that are happening without us being able to control them, and we're trying to find our way with it. So Saturn is getting ready to change signs soon, in a couple months. And so maybe those credible sources will start to come online, some new people, some fresh ideas. And so while we're like in this energy for, the next couple months, just know that newness is coming around the corner. And these different kinds of people that we look to as authority, it's going to change. And it's going to change around June, July. So we've got a couple more months of feeling the uncertainty before we start to see some exciting things happen. So lastly, the crab, the Cancer, This is the kind, warm-hearted person that comes into your room and makes sure that you're tucked in, you've got your right bed and your resources. Um, they're concerned with the physical care and protection of others. They can be emotional and reactive and take things personal, but it's all for good reason. It's not because it's coming from a selfish place, it's coming from a place of care. They feel and sense the rhythm of the world and other people's emotionality. So, these people leaving the house and going places, few and far between, baby. They like to be out of the rhythm of what other people are doing because it's intense. And when you're ruled by the moon, um, you're very closely intimate with the rhythms of the world. And so you can just feel when everything is changing. You can feel when things are erratic. You know when the moons are changing. You can see people driving differently. It just becomes a lot. So these people do need to take cover. They need to care and nurture for themselves in their own ways. And yeah, we need to validate their thoughts and feelings as experiences that are real and important. Um, Cancer people need their emotions and their feelings to be validated, and for them to not feel like they're a leper. So I've had a lot to say around this presentation here. We're getting close to the end, so I know you all know about Frida Kahlo, but I wondered if any of you knew that she was a Cancer. She's a Cancer sun in the 11th house, and her moon is in Taurus at 29 degrees, very intense moon in the 10th house. So, she has heavy issues with authority, with the masculine, with the patriarchy. She hates it. She actually hated America too. She thought that people here were not smart and that they followed blindly and did not follow their essential nature. She had a very close relationship with her father. She has the sun Jupiter, which is what I believe is what made her and dad be close. Moon in the 10th house, close to dad. Dad was able to nurture her and show her ways of dealing with her emotions in a very creative way. He was a painter, he was a sculptor, so he really showed her how to channel her emotions and to not get stuck there. So I think maybe many of us know that she was in a terrible car accident that smashed basically her pelvis and all the rest of her bones below her hips. And she was essentially in pain for the rest of her life from 18 on. And so trying to recover from this accident is what brought her back to her childhood interests in art and to become an artist. So her mom built her this really beautiful easel for her bed. Cancer bed, they don't want to leave their beds. This is the comfort. This is where they get their nurturing and restoration. So mom builds her an easel and she starts to paint herself because she doesn't really have any subjects but her. So she puts a mirror over the ceiling and she starts to paint herself as she's recovering, as she's feeling her feelings and processing what's happened to her, knowing that she's not going to have the kind of existence that she was hoping. She was very much a part of the political movements and where she was from, and really wanted to stand up and fight for the rights of her people. And when this accident happened, she didn't really feel like she could do that. But through connecting with her art, she was able to do just that and more. So she said, I paint myself because I'm often alone and I am the subject that I know best. Cancers know themselves well. You can never tell them who they are. They know. She said, this was a quote from her last year's. I've had a great restlessness about my paintings, mainly because I want to make it useful to the revolutionary communist movement. Until now, I have managed simply an honest expression of my own self. I must struggle with all of my strength to ensure that the little positive my health allows me to do also benefits the revolution, the only real reason to live. So she's got Sun in the 11th house. The 11th house is standing up for the revolution, standing up for the group, standing up for the fighter, the ones who are going to elevate society and make things better for the greater good of everybody. She's a Sun and Cancer, so she's constantly thinking about the other while she is unfortunately breaking down and not feeling well. So a lot of her art was, derived from her personal experiences, but she also had this um, love of nature and just kind of painting normal things. And so the last years of her life, she painted a lot of things about the Revolutionary Party, but also about fruits and simple things like that. So these pieces of art are actually in her home in Mexico. So Frida was influenced by Mexicanidad, a romantic nationalism that had developed in the aftermath of the revolution. The movement claimed to resist the mindset of cultural inferiority created by colonization and placed a special importance on indigenous cultures. So basically, she was really tapping into that indigenous root and culture of who she is, right? We talked about Cancer being the indigeneity of who we are. And she really brought that to the forefront. She wore all of the traditional Mexican regalia. She did not care what social norms said she needed to look like. And in fact, she influenced so much just by being herself and dressing in this what they would consider, um, archaic way, non-civilized way. Um, I think people were more enamored by that with her than anything else. The fact that she was different, Aquarius. The fact that she was unwilling to conform to societal norms. The fact that she was willing to just say whatever she wanted to out loud, and she didn't give a crap about what anybody thought. So I wanted to mention, if you have not seen Frida the documentary on Amazon Prime, so fabulous. It is actual accounts of her speaking in her native tongue and in English about her relationship with Diego, her husband, and what it was like being in that tumultuous relationship, what she felt like as a woman who had lost many babies to miscarriages, what it feels like to have your body realigned and mismanaged, and the level of care that she received. That's all in here. It's very emotional. It's absolutely extraordinarily beautiful. All of her art is in here, the way that she dressed. So just lastly, I mean, looking at some of her paintings, we can see that she features roots and imagery of these roots intertangling and twining through her body and stabilizing her into the ground. Cancers are the roots. They are the roots of the tree. They're the ones that go through and kind of help us develop a sense of groundedness, right? The earth is the Capricorn, the roots are the Cancer. We're trying to root ourselves. So it kind of shows her connection to being rooted to her ancestry, being rooted to who she is, but also in the artistry and the paintings, you can see how it kind of holds her captive and how they keep her stationary. So there's a very striking dynamic between the two that she's interplaying, where there's almost two meanings to what the painting is actually portraying. So, do we have any questions about the moon, about, you know, our relationship to it? Yeah? Let's talk about Paul Stamets? Or do you have a question?
I do have a question, and I'm such a newbie at this. It seems like to me when you have your moon in a house and in a with a sign that they can be contradictory.
It can.
Yeah,
It
and then I
can.
also wonder, like, when you were talking about the moon in the eighth house, how it's you didn't say anything positive. Isn't there anything positive about that? It seemed like it was all just so difficult, difficult, difficult.
Because that is the way that they personally identify with their lives. It's not positive. When there's
Mm.
always rupture, when there's always needing to find something when you don't have enough, it doesn't become a positive experience. So these people are resourceful. They're able to earn a lot. They're able to provide a lot for people. They're able to um, problem solve in ways and find solutions that other people aren't able to see. But it does come at a cost. It comes at a cost of potentially not having these deep relationships that they're looking for, um, to always be in search of more and better and letting go of, what did feel good for maybe what feels better. So my apologies for not making it positive. Um, I just don't know if these people feel positive with this moon. I think maybe that they feel that they see things with this moon and that they're aware of where things are not right, where there are things that they need to feed themselves with, and they go out to search for that. But it's a lot of work. It's not easy.
But isn't it still, no matter what we're talking about, what planet or placement, isn't it at some level about like finding that resilience and learning the lessons? So in that way, that's positive that they
Yes.
do provide and they do find ways to get through what might seem hard.
Right. It depends on the person and the rest of their placements, and to maybe see how they're actually feeling relating to it. But when the moon is connected to Scorpio, there's rupture and there's pain. And there's kind of the only way that we can get out of it is to see the positive side of it, to get on the other side of it, and to see what's grown inside of us, how it's made us change, how it's made us realize some things. But while we're in it, maybe it doesn't feel that great. With a person with a moon in Scorpio can feel very powerful, can feel very in control of what they're able to do for themselves. And they can often experience a lot of times where it doesn't. So this is a give and take kind of sign, Scorpio. Nothing is consistent here. You can give and things will be taken. Um, Nothing comes for free. Um, I have an echo in the background. Um, but anyways, I think these people are closely intimate with, you know, where things are not so great. Um, and there's some magic in there, but until I can actually like look at a chart and show you how those other interplays work, that it's kind of the only language I have for at the moment. And I will fix that. I will fix that. Maybe I can send an email and we'll can find some more positive things to say. Sorry, Kelly. I know how that can get.
That's not where my moon is, but it just struck me because, you know, every almost every other one that you were talking about, you had a balance of like
Yeah.
mostly
And I
positive.
bet you could talk to a moon in Scorpio, they might have like just a different reaction to it. Because their personal experience is different. So maybe I'll figure out. I've got some Moon and Scorpio people, and I'll bring some quotes, and we'll discuss how they feel about their mothers, about how they feel about hardship in life, and see how they talk, and then we can move on from there. We can just see. Um, does that sound okay?
Yeah,
Okay. See if we could put a more positive, see if I can put a more positive spin on that. All right, we are at our 5 o'clock mark. Um, I know that the class is getting long. I've had a lot to say. Um, but this Paul Stamets, he's a wonderful man. Cancer can also represent the fungi, the things that live in the darkness, the things that are growing right underneath our noses. And so this Cancer man, he is a mycologist. He has brought research and authority to the plant life of psychedelics and of mycology. Um, he's a dedicated hiker. He likes to explore. He really loves to be by himself. And he has been really fundamental in making sure that we understand what's beneath the surface, um, and has brought a lot of literature and a lot of understanding to how we can, kind of nurture ourselves in a different way, our nervous systems, how to calm down, how to have better reactions. He's put a lot of study into how to use mushrooms as a form of self-care and how to regulate the mental body and the body's physical reactions. So Stamets, as a youth, he says, I was very shy and I always stared at the ground. So I found fossils and mushrooms at a very early age. I first got into fungi because I was always attracted to that which is forbidden. When I was a young boy, I would throw puffball mushrooms at my twin brother, and their spores would explode out of the puffball upon impact. So one day my mother came out running into the yard saying, "Don't throw puffballs at your brother, their spores will make him blind." That is not true, but I thought, this is good information. Thanks, Mom. And so he pelted his brother with as many puffballs as possible. And just to speak on his first psychedelic experience, he had this really profound moment where he decided, okay, I'm going to take this bag of mushrooms, I'm going to climb up to the tallest tree, and I'm going to allow this tree to ground me into the earth. He explained it almost like a lightning rod of, being a conduit. And he said, he's sitting at the top of this tree and there's this wild rainstorm, and he's praying to himself. He's like, if I survive, I'm going to learn from this experience. And he thought, what is the biggest problem in my life? And it was his ability to communicate, because he stuttered. And so he kept repeating the mantra to himself, stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now, in between the lightning strikes. And he said he must have said it about 100 times. He said the next day he went up to the girl that he liked and he didn't stutter anymore. And so through that experience of him being on this neurodynamic kind of medicine, which we call it, being able to change one's neural pathways, he was able to do so and not stutter. Remember, we talked about developmental delays and being able to communicate and function with the world. He had that experience through the stuttering, and it ended up being something that he grew out of, but that was there. And so, the fourth house and staying home and all of that is important. But lastly, we've got a Cancer who won't stay home. He is out in the open. Elon Musk, entrepreneur. So apparently he taught himself to code at age 12, very advanced. These are the people that will advance high up to the ranks very quickly and actually need to go back and recover steps along the way because they went too quick. So there can be developmental delays, but also these children can be brilliant and kind of excel to the point where no one really knows what to do with them. They're kind of these little geniuses, and but there's other things that they're not developed in. So they're great in communication, but when it comes to people skills, it's difficult. So, he was inspired by science fiction. He's got this moon in Virgo, so he's very calculated, very methodical about his process. Everything is a calculation, needs to be accounted for. This moon in Virgo and the sun in Cancer, makes him a little cheap for himself. He lived on $1 per day eating hot dogs and oranges during college. I don't know if that's the way he spends money now, but the way that he is going through the administration and the way we spend our money is very interesting. He has 10 children and believes in population growth. He's had children with 4 different women. So not quite the Cancer that we're generally speaking of when we talk about someone who doesn't like to be in the limelight, someone who likes to stay home for safety. It's because he has a sun in the 12th house. He's directly linked to the public. He's here to serve the masses at some point, and he figured out how he was going to do that. With this moon in Virgo, he was going to try to make people's lives better, try to keep things organized, and invest in machinery. Virgo is the machinery, the way that we use computers and things like that. So, you know, the way that he brings things into the world is quite different. He's using Mercury as a main function, and only time will tell on how he is able to maneuver and influence us anymore. But he's a pretty profound, influential person. So
It's interesting that you said this about how he's a different kind of Cancer. It's funny because with the Cancer ascendant, his sun on the horizon and Mercury there, you'd think he would be a more emotional person, but like I keep hearing all these interviews about how they said he literally is kind of robotic,
yeah.
that he's not an emotional person at all. People who've worked for him or people who have shared space with him, kind of like a scarily non-emotional person.
Yeah, because he's a personal sign, but that Sun and Mercury is in an impersonal house. So the things that are happening for him are not personal. He's not personally attached to any of the things that he touches, maybe the things that he creates, but in terms of being closely related to other people's emotions, he doesn't care. He doesn't see them. He probably doesn't feel them. Um, Now, he's a highly emotional person when he doesn't get his way. And, we have seen what happens when he decides that he should be the one to control a situation. We went from Twitter to X. He had to eat his words and pay up. And so, yeah, he's working really well with Mercury and having this Virgo moon and having Mercury right on the ascendant, like you said. So, he's really using communication as a way to get to other people. Um, but do people really understand him? Do people get where he's coming from? I think that there's kind of a struggle there. Maybe some people do understand where he's coming from and know his motivations, but you know, he's not a feeling kind of person with a moon in Virgo. It's not, um, I'm thinking about my emotions. It's how do I logically solve this problem? My whole life is summed up by solving problems, whether they're good for the greater good or not. So I don't know. Only time will tell. We'll see what happens with this guy. I just thought that I would mention it because he's so influential in our in our dealings with the social media. So that is the last. That's all I've got.